Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. It's always nice to see a few friendly faces. It's been a tough, fun, and very interesting past 12 months. Hard to believe we've been doing this whole virtual thing over a year now. But Mike, Jared, Aaron, and Dan, I appreciate you coming to hang out with me today. Truly hard to believe we're a week and a half away from our third virtual conference. This is literally round three of doing 3 days straight of 50 plus presenters sharing all kinds of topics across the craft beer industry. So I appreciate the four of you being willing here today to help spread the word on this good conference. Mike, I really appreciate Precision Fermentation taking such an active role in getting involved with craft beer professionals. We really appreciate the support. We also really appreciate White Labs and River Drive Cooperage for being the presenting sponsors for this upcoming conference. And over the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit about, the challenges the four of us have faced over the past year. But first off, Mike, because you now are to the right of me, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about what Precision Fermentation does.
Absolutely, Andrew. Before I do, I wanted to give a big thank you to you and what you've been doing specifically over the last year. You're building tremendous value for the industry during a very challenging time. And I actually spoke with a brewery in Indiana earlier in the week, and they mentioned the guild disappeared as a result of the pandemic. So it's something that you're bringing to the table it's extremely important even prior to COVID, but even more so now. You're giving folks access and a community. So thank you.
Much appreciated. It's a labor of love, and it's been a true pleasure getting the ability to interact with so many great people, no matter where they are in the country. So I appreciate the kind words.
Yes, absolutely, and we're a proud sponsor of what you're doing, and will continue to be so as a result. But my role, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Precision Fermentation, and we are a 3-year-old startup. That doesn't mean that we were actually productive in the first couple of years of our business, but we produce an application or a system for fermentation monitoring called Brew Monitor. And it's been a really, really fun evolution, although albeit challenging over the last year.
So while you're here, what exactly is Brew Monitor, Mike?
Yeah, Brew Monitor is a real-time fermentation monitoring device. And really, what does that mean? We give visibility to the end user in terms of the fermentation process by measuring 7 variables related to fermentation, and then giving the user not only remote access to that data, but the ability to analyze and compare and benchmark and alert the progression of a fermentation or lack thereof, which is not uncommon. So it's been a fun evolution, great feedback from the industry, and we're excited to be a part of it.
And it's fun to see so much technology pop into the craft beer space. It's definitely helping breweries succeed.
Absolutely.
Now, Jared, you and I have talked quite a bit the past couple of weeks. It's been a pleasure each time. And can you tell everybody else a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm with Two Track Malting. We're out of North Dakota, so we're a small craft malting company. We're not the big guys, but we're growing our own grains. We're malting it ourselves, and then we're shipping directly to brewers all across the country. So we started out back in 2015. 2016 was the first time that we started our first batch, and we've just been producing since then. But I'll echo what Mike said. It's been challenging this last year. Here in North Dakota, we're a little bit more isolated. We didn't have as many lockdowns as other states, but we've got customers as far as Florida and New Jersey. So every state is so different on how they approach the whole COVID situation. So just trying to keep up with who's open, who's not, during that time was a challenge. And I think we're starting to see a little uptick now with people starting to get back on board with brewing. So we're really excited where this is going, and really glad we could be a part of this. So thanks for having us.
Well, appreciate you being here. It's funny you mentioned keeping track of who's open and who's not open. Early in the pandemic, I created a spreadsheet that I had divided up by state, and I was listing the capacity people were allowed to be at breweries. I had any other restrictions that were relevant. I learned pretty quickly I could not keep up with that spreadsheet, and I think I let it go about a month after the pandemic started.
Yep.
Aaron, how's everything in Charlotte?
Oh, it's good. I finally got my phone working. My computer wasn't working before. It's been nothing but an adventure. So you can't get out of seeing my smiling face this time, Andrew, however much you might want to.
Well, I appreciate you joining. And there's a new company behind your name today. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I am actually the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Community Brewing Ventures, spun out of D9 Brewing here in the Charlotte area. But what we do is we help small and mid-sized breweries overcome the manufacturing and capital constraints that a lot of times can keep them from being able to realize whatever growth goals that they have. I mean, we all know how many hats somebody running a brewery has to wear. I mean, you have to be a perfect manufacturer, perfect hospitality manager, perfect logistics person, perfect salesperson. We try to take the stuff that they didn't get into this industry to do in the first place, the stuff that, is boring but essential, and specialize in doing that so that they can get back in the stuff that's actually creating value for the customer.
Fantastic. And what are you going to be talking about in your presentation during the conference?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about pricing, the most thrilling thing imaginable, the thing that everybody is just getting absolutely excited next week to hear about. So tune on in if you want to hear me talk about things like charm pricing and price to retailer and how to work backwards to figure out what you should be charging. It's thrilling.
It's very, very important stuff that you're doing, Aaron. So I appreciate you always being willing to share your expertise. And well, Dan seems to have lost signal for one moment, so I'm going to put a little debate on the table. Aaron and Mike, you're both in North Carolina. I have one day to come spin. Should I go to Charlotte for a beer, or should I go to the Chapel Hill Triangle area?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I was just going to give Aaron his props because he made one of the best cucumber beers I've ever had. Not that that's high on my list of repeat tasting experiences, but it was fantastic. So
I'm always looking for good beer that you can drink while you're at the spa.
I think there's great beer in both places. I think there's probably more establishments in the Charlotte area, but between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, there's quite a few fantastic tasting experiences here.
Well, you guys heard it here first. You all heard that Mike said that Charlotte is better, so let's go ahead and roll with that. No, one of the wonderful things about North Carolina is you really can't throw a rock without hitting a great beer market. We really, in my opinion, and I say this with enormous respect for all the states surrounding us, we are the gem of the southern beer scene. There's a lot of great stuff in Virginia, a lot of great stuff in Florida and Georgia, but North Carolina has really blossomed, and I don't think it gets the credit it deserves as being the same as
No, I'll agree to that. There's a lot of really good things coming out of North Carolina right now, whether you're in Charlotte or the Triangle area. I've been really impressed with the growth. And one observation that I've made, and Mike, I'm really curious your thoughts on this as well. In a lot of tech-friendly cities that are just really pro-entrepreneurship, you've seen a lot of growth in the craft beer segments. I mean, Charlotte, for example, the Triangle area, Columbus, Ohio, those are cities that I can just kind of spit out pretty quickly that they're seeing fantastic growth. Is that something you kind of put side by side?
Yeah, well, I think Asheville. Aaron, I think Aaron would agree. Asheville was a hotbed, and I think with White Labs opening up, with White Labs opening up there, and AB Tech having a great brewing program. But NC State here opened up. I think just got a degree program around yeast management. So I think that's only going to help the scene. But yeah, I mean, in these large metro areas, and specifically here with the growth that we're seeing, just the general population growth in this area of the country, it's ripe. And with that, new talent, both brewing and tech talent, are coming down here in droves.
Yeah, if you really need to target the target demographic for the people who start breweries, which is its own conversation, its own issue. But if you want to take a look at the people who start breweries, it's pretty much exactly the demographic that's been moving to the Carolinas in droves. So it kind of makes sense. There tends to bring a lot of new influx of cash and money into the area as well. We're selling a luxury good. It makes sense that it would follow, and whatever else may come with it. It's been really nice to see the quality of the beer and just the number of establishments really grow and proliferate.
Absolutely. And Dan, now that you're back, we'll let you tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Thanks. Sorry about that. My name is Daniel Jones. I work at Stern & Eisenberg. We're a law firm that represents craft breweries, anybody in the craft beer industry, anybody who works with any kind of alcohol, really. We always try to say that, we understand the law, but we also understand the craft beer mentality and culture. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of this conference again. We're going to be doing a little bit about mergers and acquisitions from the point of the brewery. So hopefully to give some insight, mostly, things to watch out for if you find yourself in that situation.
Well, thanks again for being here, Dan. And our conference, we're proud that anyone can watch it while it's live or go back after the fact to catch it in the archives whenever they like on our YouTube channel as well. But Dan, your presentation from the last conference on music licensing has seen a lot of views since then. I don't know if it was like one of the top 3 topics during the last event in October, but people keep going back and really, really appreciate the knowledge you dropped in that presentation.
I hope that, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get the knowledge out there so that, everybody can take advantage of it. I am not, here to make a quick buck or anything like that. I'm trying to support this industry because, I benefit from it personally. If there are, more breweries out there, I get to drink more good beer, and I'm happy about that.
There you go. It's a fun world we work in. Now, I want to throw out the question to the 4 of you. The past year has been a challenge. It's been hard to maintain relationships with people with, the lockdowns, everything opening up, lockdowns again. How have the 4 of you maintained relationships, one, with your friends, but also with the customers and the breweries that you work with?
Literally all I do is post on Facebook.
Well, Aaron, that's an interesting one because you and I do very similar things. How has that helped you stay connected with people, and how has that kind of made you feel that sense of human interaction?
Yeah, so it's actually been a pretty organic fit for me. I think I'm getting some echo. Yeah, so my background is actually, I've been moving around most of my life. I'm on my 17th address in 33 years, so I've gotten really used to using social media as a way of keeping in touch with people I may not be able to see face to face. So it's been a pretty organic transition throughout the course of the pandemic to just go to things like this, go to things like Zoom, go to things like phone calls and emails and text. And the important thing is just stay present, keep those lines of communication open. And so many people use things like Facebook just as a means of, posting pictures of, their baby or their cats. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much LinkedIn for the industry. You're a lot more likely to find a brewer on Facebook than you are actually on LinkedIn. So it's a fantastic professional networking tool.
That's a very true statement. I've always wanted to have success connecting with people on LinkedIn in the beer world. And I have connected with quite a bit of people on there. But with regard to the value Facebook gives, it's just so much more instantaneous, and the pool to connect is a lot larger. I feel it's definitely more utilized in the craft beer space.
Yeah, and Andrew, as a startup, we really hadn't penetrated the market extensively because, as a number of folks know, that we actually went out to pilot in 2018 locally here, and then we expanded that pilot to the rest of the U.S. in 2019. And when you're putting a pilot in place, you're looking for early adopters, right? So we hadn't built that network, and I've been involved now for 4 years, so that's how long I've been involved in brewing specifically. But what we were doing is the people who were interested in what we were doing, who we had engaged with, we actually created an internal network within the small business. So there's 25 of us now, but we were encouraging our friends and relatives in various parts of the country to just go up and go fill up a growler somewhere, or buy a 4-pack, buy a 6-pack, buy a case. In one instance, we had a brewery, a small brewery in Florida, and my brother lives about 20 minutes away, and I was like, "Here's my credit card. Go." And they were a brew pub, so they had food, and I'm like, "Here, go buy lunch or dinner or whatever it is, and get a couple bottles." And what was interesting is that particular brewery, he had said to me, I never wanted to be involved in the food business. I always wanted to just be on the beverage side, produce beer, and that's it. He said the food business saved me. So that was a really encouraging story. So when he said that, it was like, what can we do? And so we started that network, and I think it helped a little bit, certainly in those first few months where it was radio silence across the board.
Definitely. Now, with regard to sending people to breweries in the early days, were you requiring them to get any contact information from, say, the manager or owner? What was the end game there, just to go get the experience in?
Support the community. What I've learned, from the world that I came from, and stepping into this industry, It was such a breath of it was truly a breath of fresh air in the sense that, people who were involved in this industry did it because it was a passion. They loved doing it. And how receptive they were for us, even if put it this way, there was never a door shut in our face when we were knocking on. I was literally knocking on doors, walking in bay doors, loading docks, just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Everyone was always so accommodating. So it was just a means of us as a business. And actually, two of my partners have spent the last 25 years in hospitality, one specifically in wine and the other in beer. So, they instilled that in the business. So it was something we wanted to truly give back to.
And Mike, awesome. I'm sure that that like anybody in this industry, I'm sure you've seen this, like you don't need to hit them up for contact info. You'll grab a beer and by the end of it, you guys will be posting drunk videos on each other's TikTok feed or something. I mean, it's a very welcoming industry that way.
Absolutely.
Aaron, side note, what is the value of TikTok in the craft beer space, in your opinion?
All I know about TikTok is that I have not downloaded it because I know if I do, that's a rabbit hole I can never come back from. But I do think it has a lot of value for connecting with a younger market. I mean, Generation Z, they don't drink in the same numbers as even millennials did, who drank less than the generations before them. Some of that is just the aging out of demographics, but we need to keep in mind that we have to do a better job of reaching out both to Generation Z on their terms and the areas where they are, being a millennial-driven industry like craft beer, as well as reaching out to older drinkers who are making up an increasingly large cohort and have even more disposable income to spend on this stuff. And we're not doing a great job at either right now.
I'm excited to hear your advice and your primer on pricing in a few days, because I'm sure it's going to touch on some of those things as well.
I never stay on topic.
Well, Jared, how have you stayed connected with people, whether your friends or your clients, over the past year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've always had trouble with is, we're located in North Dakota. So we don't have, a ton of breweries like you guys have right in your backyard. So we've always been, having to look outside the box on how do we, connect with our customers, let's say, are on the East Coast or, down in Florida or wherever. And, one of the big ways that we've done in the past has been, the big conferences, craft, the CBC. And of course, now we're going on, 2 years in a row where there really hasn't been one. There should be one here this fall, which we're excited for. But, it's reaching out to them saying, how can we help? Is there some posts that we can share? Do you have some requests that we need to do? And, typical phone calls, emails, this whole Zoom generation has kind of opened up the doors for, companies like us where we might not be able to physically travel to all these places because we don't have it in the budget because, we are a smaller company. So it has opened up the doors more as far as how we can reach them, how we can visit with them. And, at the end of the day, it's all about, what do they need and how can we help? And so I think, especially during these challenging times, it was, I know what you're going through. We're going through the same thing because your business is our business, and it was a little difficult, but there's finally this light at the end of the tunnel. So now we're getting a lot more active. We've got some fun promotions that we've done here locally. Whether it's a sponsored beer glass where we're inviting everybody out, where we're just trying to uplift their company as much as we can, and in return, they're promoting us. So it's a win-win for both of us. But it's just like you said, stay present. You have to stay in front of them and make sure that, you're adjusting for what they need, because every, that whole transition from the tap room to go to maybe in some places having to do food just to, to survive. I mean, it's just an ongoing evolution here within the industry, but I think overall we're going to come out pretty good on this, as far as all the brewers go.
That's really interesting feedback, Jared. I mean, Crappy Professionals, we've always been located virtually, but it sounds like Two Track Malting, you've always been located remotely in North Dakota, not to, pick at your location, but you've had to find other ways to connect with your customer because, as you mentioned, they're not in the backyard like in many other, larger craft beer cities in the country. So I bet you were already one step ahead when it came to knowing how to connect with customers and potential customers through the pandemic. Is that something you would agree to?
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has made it more, almost more acceptable. Where, hey, we don't have to show up at your door, and schedule a meeting because everybody's busy and everybody's got different rules and regulations in their state. So, I mean, it's kind of helped us in a way, just because we've always been doing this, as we can't be there in person at every place. So it's just become more acceptable, I think, across the industry. But don't get me wrong, we're we want to get back in those doors and shake hands and visit with people, but yeah, we just it's been different this last year.
Jared, that's a fantastic point, and one I want to dive back into in a minute after we hear from Dan. Dan, besides your internet connection going in and out, how have you been able to stay connected to people over the past year?
Yeah, not by internet, definitely by phone. Lots of phone. But we put some from educational materials out there, and we get questions, but it's a lot of phone calls with our clients saying, this new regulation came out, what do we need to do about it, and then it's us walking them through it. So a lot more word of mouth for us, and we try to put our name out there as much as possible, to get in there early, because the sooner we get in on an issue, the sooner we can help, and advise of all the potential pitfalls. So yeah, lots of phone conversations with everybody.
Now, each of your companies obviously have your own expertise, but have you found yourselves reaching outside that level of expertise to put out other information to all the breweries that you work with through the pandemic, and just trying to provide as much value as you can? Aaron, I'll let you jump on that one.
You know what industry we're in, right?
Yes, sir.
No, we have definitely found that. I mean, anytime you're in this industry, there is a complete dearth of literature as far as running the business. There's a ton of literature about how to make great beer. There's not a ton on how to run a successful brewery. So anybody who has that within their knowledge base, it's not only, the onus isn't only on you to share that, but honestly, that's an asset that you have. It's just the ability to share some of that expertise and help some of these breweries that were started by people who have diverse backgrounds. They might have been in IT, they might have been a lawyer, they might have been, an engineer, but with all the hats you have to wear running any sort of small business, there's bound to be pretty significant gaps in the skill set. So yeah, I know, at least for my part, and I'm sure the same can be said for everybody on this call, you wind up playing consultant just by virtue of moving in this industry.
Aaron, I absolutely agree. And having a different perspective coming into the industry, I think the one thing that amazed me was the level of intelligence that was associated with industry. I mean, every engagement that I would have, someone was an electrical engineer, a biochemist, an IT professional, an artist potentially, right? But these people who were very much educated in whatever field they were in before they stepped into this business, and I think that was a big missing piece at the smaller end. The service that you're providing, it's essential. I had dealt in a past life with credit unions, and they always used to say, this is a community-based organization. And I'd say, yeah, that's great, but you got to pay the bills to keep the lights on and keep the doors open, right? So it was about good fiscal management, and I think that lends itself to folks like Dan and folks like Aaron, in the community, and making themselves visible and available. It's paramount.
Yeah, to go back to Aaron's point, I don't know how many times I have played therapist as well as attorney. I feel like once we have people back in the office, I need to put a couch in here so that people can lay down and just air out all their problems. But definitely, yeah, absolutely. Building that network and being able to provide those connections to people is golden.
But Dan, to go along with your comment about playing therapist, I think that's a really important role that you have played during the pandemic, because we all need someone to talk to. We're all dealing with our own personal challenges. And by you being the shoulder to cry on, I know I've been Aaron's shoulder to cry on before. He likes shoulders to cry on. It's just, a way you can help someone get through a really tough time. And it's not been an easy year. So I think that service and value you're providing the people whether friends or clients or whoever they may be, is really valuable. And it's an important part of your professional relationship.
I don't cry on your shoulder. I complain loudly at your face. There's a small difference.
Aaron, peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter.
Start with me. Oh.
But Jared, I like to throw this one to you because you have a very niche role in the craft beer industry. You provide a craft malt product. Have there been other areas you've put out information, or has the education strictly been along the lines of what you do?
Well, I mean, the whole craft malt thing has always been education since the start. I mean, because if you rewind back, even 5-10 years, there really was only just a few suppliers where every brewer was getting their same ingredient, and it was the Malt Europes, the Rars, the Cargills of the world, and those really were the only options. So we've had to educate from the very beginning. What is craft malt? What makes it different? What makes it unique? One of the things that we've found, though, is since we're not the big guys, and since we are as small as like most of our customers, like a craft brewery, the whole pandemic has kind of shifted. How do you support the smaller companies that have to make ends meet? I think we've seen some uptick in our customer base just because we're not a corporate jet type of company that flies around, where people are saying, oh yeah, I didn't realize there was an ingredient option that kind of fits their culture, and that's kind of why we got into this too. Is we wanted the whole 3 or 4 companies that you could buy from in the past might not have actually fit that brewer's culture. They have a story. They wanted something unique. They wanted to tell their story with the brews that they make. Well, their ingredient side, when you have everything the same, you don't get that separation, that differentiation between supplier to supplier, beer to beer. So we've seen that happen. It's been a lot of work as far as saying, hey, this is what we do. This is what this is the benefits. But we're starting to see more and more people saying, what, let's give this a shot, because this is supporting that community and that area, that similar area that we're in as a craft brewer.
And talking craft malt, are there certain profiles of brewers you see more receptive to using your products than others?
The bigger the brewery, the more that they're established, let's say, silo fills, that kind of thing. That's something that we just don't play in. And I don't think really any craft maltsters are doing that. So, our customer, I'd say the craft malt customer base are people who are looking for ways to better tie in their brews to either their roots, whether that be locally or just a smaller, artisanal craft maltster that's out there. So I don't want to rule out the big guys, but usually, if they're saying, hey, we're, using truckloads and doing silo fills, it's just not economical. We don't have that scale. I don't think any craft maltster has that scale. So, what we have found is our target customer has been in that, 3 to 15 barrel range, where, they've got a lot more flexibility. They can do, more batches, one-offs, test batches, that kind of thing. And that's really been our bread and butter since we've started this. I'd love for us to work with big brewers, but then at the same token, it's really just not in their wheelhouse. You got to know what niche you fit, in that whole terroir aspect of it, of, where it's grown, that kind of thing, that, resonates with those types of brewers who are looking at, how do they differentiate themselves and use something that's truly unique. Because we just provide the paint. You guys, you're the artists.
And Aaron, because you are so interwoven in the community, and you can talk about anything, what have you been seeing with regard to craft malt? Over the past few years, you see trends that are almost ingredient based, whether it's new hops, new yeast. Where do you see craft malt in the picture, Aaron?
First, let me say that I have huge respect for the Craft Maltsters Guild and everybody who's doing it. That is a thankless job that does not get nearly as much attention as it should. It is a very important raw material, and as much as even the big guys are turning out some really solid malt, it's wonderful to see this real sense of locality and this real same hardworking craft spirit. With that said, I don't think the consumer cares yet. I think we are still at that point where hops are getting all the attention and where the education still needs to be done. I don't think your average consumer searching a shelf is really that they're focused on a certain definition of local. And I don't think that they get so granular to where they're really looking for something that's using entirely locally sourced ingredients. But that being said, it does make a difference in the final product. And I do think it matters to the people producing the beer. I know that craft brewers really do place value on being able to keep those supply chains, if not local, then at least with similarly minded people like Jared, like everybody at the guild that Jesse represents, who really put that focus on turning out quality product every single time. And there is stuff that you can only get from them. I mean, Jared, I'm not as familiar, I'll be honest, with your product portfolio, but I know like Caleb down in Indiana at Sugar Creek Malting, I mean, you're not going to be able to get traditional Nordic style malt from anybody else. Good luck selling it to anybody, but maybe Scratch Brewing in Fontaflora. But it's wonderful to have that option out there, and you need people who care about the craft more than they necessarily care about scale or size or profit margins to really be able to go in on that and really put that work in.
Really great feedback there, Aaron. And Jared and Mike, and possibly Dan as well, Jared and Mike, you both have a very unique product or service that you provide to the industry that definitely requires, as Aaron said, some sort of educational component. How have you found it best to educate the consumer, well, not necessarily the consumer, Jared, the consumer on your end, but the brewery about the value in what you're doing? Where have been the best mediums to connect?
Yeah, I mean, if I can take that first, Andrew, essentially, we're challenging traditional methods, right? Because for folks that are familiar with us, and Dave Frizzell will go through this on the 19th when he presents about the connected brewer. But one of the things that one of the conversations I had at Thiebel was making the argument about taking a picture versus watching a video. If you're looking at a still shot, you really don't know what happened prior to, and you don't know what happened after. You see a video, obviously, you know the whole narrative. So by challenging the norms around traditional sampling methods, right, we're pushing people into a new realm, and hoping with Aaron's business, hoping changing the dynamic and deploying resources where they're needed more so than taking a manual sample, but also getting away from the traditional brew sheet. And yes, they look at their ERPs when they have a chance, right? Unless they have the bandwidth to apply extensive research and analysis on why things went right and why things went wrong. We're bringing that consolidated viewpoint to each individual fermentation and allowing them to benchmark what, from a sensory perspective, was spot on, and hoping that they can replicate. And with Jared here, those raw materials, right? They're changing from season to season, and so there's not much you can do with the seasonal change in raw materials. But if you have a benchmark, whether it's a seasonal beer or a core brand, I think one of the things that I have to speak with Aaron in depth about this, but with the advent of new breweries opening across the street, right? It's ensuring that customer that comes in, sits down at the bar, has a beer and comes back 2 or 3 months later on a new production run and says, well, this I don't remember. Maybe I ate something, it didn't taste so, maybe that's why the palate isn't so great on this particular beer. Well, as a novice coming into the industry, I was like, yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. Now that I've learned more behind the scenes, it's a true challenge. I mean, this is not baking that these guys are doing. This is chemistry. This is biology. This is everything. And so, what we're trying to bring to the table is a tool that enables them to be more functionally efficient in the workplace, and then at the end of the day, ensures that they're delivering a more consistent product for whatever they're making, right? So, and selfishly as a consumer, that's what I want. So, so that's my take on it, Andrew.
Oh, fantastic. And Mike, I asked Jared the question about the ideal, customer profile for 2-Track, but for Precision, are you seeing a certain type of customer appear more so than others?
That's the biggest challenge. you want a repeatable process. Same thing in the brewing industry, but for building this business, the value proposition is all over the place. And, that's from an individual owner operator producing, 500 to 700 barrels up to, large industrial production. There's certain problems that they're trying to solve. And, our application is either a process control tool or a diagnostic tool. So what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to learn? I mean, we've seen guys that have, faulty blow-offs that we're having to call people and saying, did you really want the PSI to go up that high? This is what we're seeing. And they're like, oh man, I didn't open the valve enough, or, glycol, the jackets on one particular tank, little things like that. They've had a problem with a particular tank. They need to monitor it. It's a large tank. They don't want to replace it. They can't seem to figure out what the problem is. We can work in that situation as well. So it runs the gamut. And that's something we're trying to solve, Andrew, is specifically, there's ROI across the board in each instance, but it's too broad at this point.
I guess that's why you still consider yourself a startup, because you're still trying to target the exact market you should be marketing to. But on one hand, though, that shows a lot of opportunity that there's so many different customer types interested in the product that you offer.
Absolutely. We've installed on three barrel fermentation tanks and as high as 400 barrel. So everyone has their unique challenges, and we're there to try to help. And for us, it's about getting people to try. Like I said, by challenging traditional methods. I mentioned Siebel, and they were like, yeah, when we talked about this, they were like, it makes complete sense, but there's never been a technology to embed the visibility into the process that we bring. So we're trying hard.
No, it's been fun to follow so far. And Dan, on to you. Kind of talking a little bit about how you've educated your clients and other breweries through this whole process. Are there any topics you've learned about and had to speak on that you never expected to have to share information about?
Early on in the pandemic, the PPP loans were a big deal. So we had to educate ourselves pretty quickly on those. In order to, help everybody that we were talking to. But yeah, definitely before the pandemic, there were articles that we would write, and, we do in-person presentations. But post-pandemic, it's been a lot of, online, lots of phone calls. And as far as, topics go, it's always, there are so many legal issues that come up when you're running a brewery that, we've always kind of just, whatever a brewery needs, if I need to learn about it on the spot, that's what I'll do. The law is out there, it is what it is, and I'm just, interpreting it for them. But yeah, less like zoning issues during the pandemic, more employment and funding issues during the pandemic. So it has been changing. I think we'll go back to the traditional areas in a little bit here. But yeah, I've definitely learned a lot during the pandemic, and I hope that I've been able to pass on that knowledge to the people we work with.
I hate looking at contract law and franchise law and service law. And yeah, I swear, a full half of my job these days is dealing with the nuance of law in various states. God bless people like yourself, Dan, who you guys elected to do this on purpose. I just wanted free beer.
Dan, one thing you said that surprised me, you mentioned about licensing and for locations and whatnot. With so many breweries operating patios and so many breweries operating patios in places and outdoor spaces where they didn't previously have those, I would have thought you would have had to interact more with breweries with regarding to their interaction with the city or landlords, whoever, to make sure those spaces would happen. That's not something you experienced?
at least here, most breweries were able to, shift to their outdoors locations pretty easily. If you had a parking lot, it wasn't so much of an issue as, you set up a few tables out there, or you do curbside. That's not an issue in our state like it is with so many others. I remember back to our legal call, the attorneys down in Tennessee were saying they were having an issue because Nashville, I think, wasn't allowing curbside pickup. So I'm lucky that I haven't had to deal with that issue, because that sounds like a terrible nightmare. But there's been a little bit of that, but not as much as you would here, at least.
Well, and it's a good thing that there's absolutely no special interests involved in alcohol legislation.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Dan, there's been so many changes to the way alcohol laws have worked over the pandemic. Curbside, to go, beer shipping. This could be a whole panel in itself discussing the future of that. But in 60 seconds, what are your predictions on like the e-commerce, the way people get alcohol over the next year and beyond? Just a quick look in the crystal ball.
Sorry, sir. How people get alcohol over the next year? Is that what the
legislation regarding that? Oh, sorry. We've seen so many laws kind of pause to allow breweries to get their alcohol in the hands of customers in different ways. What are your predictions on what's going to stick in the future, in the next year and beyond, of what's going to happen with regard to distribution?
I think it's going to be direct consumer is probably going to continue to grow. Lots of e-commerce is going to continue to grow. I think for the most part, the changes are going to stick around. I don't think too many states are going to backslide. But yeah, lots of increased distribution across the country. I think, as a country, we're moving forward, we're opening things up. And it's great because it allows us to get our hands on great beer from, across the country. I love it.
Definitely. Now, for the four of you, what's something you've learned from your customers or breweries over the past few months? Something that you didn't expect to learn that's kind of influenced the way you operate your business?
I'll jump in. I'll just say that the creativity and the adaptability of craft beverage producers is every bit as present in their business models as it is in the products that they're producing. I still don't think we've seen the big hit. I don't think we've seen even the start of the actual effects of the pandemic on the beer industry. I think we're in a bit of a false sense of positivity about a lot of that. But by the same token, to see so many breweries be able to pivot on a dime, be able to completely upend their business models, their preconceptions, their product splits, and find ways of surviving in an absolutely unprecedented scenario was extremely heartening, and it was extremely encouraging that no matter where craft beer heads from here, the industry is going to find ways of filling in those cracks and surviving like a beautiful, wonderful cockroach.
Well, it's funny. I mean, not to be too sappy about it, the word resilient definitely stands out. And, when Sierra Nevada first released their beers with the name, it was way before the pandemic even started. But I think that word has been really true of the craft beer industry over the past little bit over a year.
Yeah, it's definitely shown the ability to bounce back in surprising ways. And I've been inspired day to day just with the people I interact with in the industry and watching how they managed to take something that they had no time or money to prepare for and still find ways of staying alive.
Absolutely. Now, Jared and Mike, how about you both? What's something you've learned from your customers or breweries recently?
I found that, like I mentioned earlier, that the first 3 months, there were crickets, right? But we would have conversations about what they were doing, trying to figure it out, whether it was trying to get a canning line in, whether it was, taking back the kegs and packaging those kegs. And it forced me, and I brought back to my team, to pivot for our business. Like, these folks were doing whatever they could to gather resources, whether it was applying for the PPE, the loans, and so for us, we had to look to who was making beer, and that was globally. I pivoted to the Southern Hemisphere. We did. Australia and New Zealand were doing well. Okay, we had no presence in that part of the country, and we're a little tiny startup, pre-revenue, and how are we going to do this? And I leveraged our director of marketing, Bruce, who Andrew knows well, to start getting our name out there. Could we start reaching out and getting a foothold? So we started to do that. South America looked good before they got crushed. We also went to Western Europe because they looked good at that time as well. And there were so many logistical challenges. It's not just simply putting our product in a box and sending it. It's the service aspect, and knowing that the craft beer world is all about service. That's how we've built our model. So we couldn't open it up globally until we had the infrastructure in place to take a call at 2:00 in the morning. And so we had wonderful partners, and still have in Western Europe. I think it's in 4 countries in Europe. I mentioned Australia, New Zealand. Taiwan. Like, how do you service Taiwan? Okay, so again, knowing that 2 of my partners are from hospitality and have lived through this and other means, they helped me, and collectively we put that infrastructure in place to now be here in 2021 and still have legs, hopefully. So I look to the business of craft beer as a model for how to successfully keep our doors open.
Now, Mike, was it initially in your business plan to expand outside the United States? And if so, did the pandemic, quicken the process of the need to go beyond our borders?
Absolutely. I was looking, we were sitting remotely in a Zoom meeting in June saying, holy, what are we going to do here? And we're like, okay, let's just do it. Let's try that. And actually, it caused us to actually step into other mediums as well. So we got into kombucha. We had tested on seltzer, so we started pushing seltzer, cider, off grain or non-grain spirits. We started to step into all of this. It was on our roadmap, but it wasn't until 2022. So look, things happen for a reason. We've had to do a little more R&D, but also for us, it actually allowed us, like I told you, there was a local pilot, a national pilot, and then kind of a soft release. I had just come back from Indianapolis on March 7th from the Indiana Brewers Guild, and 7 breweries are like, send me contracts, and then done, right? So it enabled us to kind of look inwardly, put more effort into R&D, built out our engineering group with the little funds that we had, and it enabled us to reach out to folks when people they were hesitant, but they were willing to have discussions late summer into the fall, and that's how we started kind of getting back in business, so to speak.
No, I love it. That startup mentality, just doing what you got to do and growing the company.
A lot of hustle.
Definitely. Jared, how about yourself? What have you learned from the breweries you've interacted with over the past year?
Well, when this whole thing started, back in the spring, one of the things that since we are growing as well, there's a very limited season when you have to make some pretty big decisions as far as what goes in the ground, because, that was happening about the same time as this pandemic was starting. So, when we were visiting with our customers, we're like, okay, we know you don't know what's going to happen next, but at the same token, for us to be here the next year, we have to make some pretty big decisions on, what we're planting into the ground, because we're not going to be able to, harvest that till the fall. So we kind of took a step back, and we've been working on a few exciting projects where we've been working with North Dakota State University, one of the world's world-renowned barley breeding programs. So that kind of pivoted us to say, okay, if we're going to survive this and take it to the next level, what could we be doing that's completely different than everybody else? And we were able to actually work on developing this new type of barley variety. So we went forward with that. But now, we've got something that's truly unique, that we're the only ones growing it. We're the only ones malting it. So it's almost, exclusive to us in the world right now. But, those were all the exciting things that were happening. But at the same token, we had to make sure that we had a customer base that was going to, be able to use it. So that was, one of the challenging parts, is just keeping that line of communication open with our brewers. Some of those had to pivot to, of course, strictly off sale, and they might not have had canning. Well, we don't provide canning equipment, but we're trying to be as supportive as we can, saying, okay, I know you might not need something right now, but let's keep that dialogue open and be able to help you when you get back into it. And after all this is said and done, what I'm seeing just from our standpoint is we're starting to see the uptick happen right now with brewing. So it leads us to another potential issue of, okay, if everybody's kicking off right now, in the next couple of months, what does that look like to the supply chain? Because you have this monthly average that you've had over the years, that's been completely thrown out. And we tried to get kind of a handle on it as far as, does that monthly, is it everything delayed by a little bit? And we kind of thought that, and then all of a sudden we one of our slowest months was one of our busiest months. So that's just been a challenge. So keeping that dialogue open with the brewers, because the one thing that could happen is if everybody's starting to brew like crazy at once, that could create another supply issue, where you're not just talking about, is there a can shortage, but is there some other type of shortage, that could be looming. But, luckily we took the jump on, we're not going to be put in that situation. So I think we're going to be riding okay on this, but that's something that's been in the back of my mind here for a little while, because we're starting to see those numbers tick up. And, typically the January, February, March, have been slower, but now they've actually greatly improved year over year.
No, that's great news. The one thing you touched on midway through your comments was, staying in communication with your partners, whether they're a current client or potentially future client, having that relationship and showing them that you care is keeping you front center. It's keeping you on their mind. It's keeping that loyalty that's going to go way beyond the pandemic. Just like if you were a brewery, by providing like a safe, clean patio, you're giving a space for someone to come where they feel comfortable. People will appreciate you for having those relationships with them during these tough months. Following the pandemic, when they're ready to come spend money, you're going to be their guy, because I think they're going to be ready to spend it with the people they really respect. They appreciate the culture, and they appreciate the connections built during these tough times. Now, I want to ask all of you one more question before we wind this hour down. One thing, Mike, that you mentioned is the ability to essentially be everywhere at once during the pandemic. You can interact with all your partners, whether in the States or whether, who knows, in a different time zone, 6,000 miles away. You have the same ease to work with each almost. With regard to that, I've had the opportunity to talk at a lot of conferences over the course of the past year, and they've been great because I essentially show up 5 minutes before I go on a virtual stage. I talk for an hour, zero travel cost. Granted, I don't get the social interaction that I wish, but the opportunities to speak with people have been readily available. What are your thoughts on the state of, in-person and virtual events, say a year from now, when we are able to go back to being face-to-face, but at the same time, we appreciate saving money by not going somewhere. And we appreciate, like Jared, finding new ways to interact with people across the country. Do you think we'll be to a place in the future where we have normal events in person like we have, or will they be a mix of virtual with, that in-person aspect?
I mean, this industry is a social industry. It begs itself to be social. And I will speak to our specific example, which I didn't raise, which was our sales force had only done things in person. We were out visiting, knocking on doors. That didn't happen. So what did we have to do? We had a shift, and I think the industry maybe was not used to this, right? I think the industry has gotten more comfortable with this, but my guys have started to go out, and brewers are receptive. So at least in small settings, I think it's already happening. But Jared mentioned CBC, and I mean, I don't know what the turnout's going to be, but the fact that they removed the spacing restrictions in the exhibit hall, to me, was a good sign. Obviously we're watching the news to see what everyone says, but we plan to be there. We're not shy. And the question is, the question I would have for the guys is, knowing that a lot of folks have been beat up over the last year, are they going to show up? our brewery's going to show up. So I don't have that answer. I mean,
Well, I look
Jared,
forward to sharing beer with you in September.
yeah, exactly.
Well,
Safely,
that's
of
been a
course.
concern of ours too, specifically for CBC is, it's been a challenging year and a half, so, in traveling for those, unless it's in your backyard, it's not free. So, is it going to be the same attendance? And I think internally we're not expecting the same, but, we're going to be exhibiting, we're excited to be out there, but I just wonder if the big events, are those just kind of going to start to wind down? And is it all going to be pushed to one big event, or is it going to be more of the style of let's keep in contact throughout the year? That's why I really like what you're doing, Andrew, because it's not necessarily a huge big event where everybody travels to, but you're getting everybody interactive throughout the year, so it's not, hey, we'll see you, in a year from now again, and we'll have a big party. It's more of a, hey, let's keep in touch and keep this conversation going on a regular basis. And I think it's going to be a mix between the two, because there's pros to the virtual. Obviously, it's better to be in person, but I think it's going to be a nice, strong, steady mix between the two. And I think I welcome that.
Jared, those are great points. And the pandemic for me has put a lot of opportunity out there. And it's, we should all have conversations with each other regularly because we have so much to learn. And, I'm scheduled to present at CBC with a panel of taproom managers from across the country. And I'll be speaking about this at the CBP conference coming up. We have a panel that we've dubbed Personal and Professional Growth Through Friendship. And what we found is about a year ago when we started having these weekly Zoom meetings, we were preparing for our presentation at CBC together. And when it got postponed, we kept having these virtual meetings every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. And what they turned into wasn't prep for a presentation, but they became a true friendship where we were checking in on one another, learning from one another. Sometimes the conversation wasn't at all about beer or anything industry related. And sometimes it was absolutely discussing taproom trends and the struggles we're all facing. And what we learned from this is there's so much value in friendship and talking to other people, outside of your home area, because we have so much to learn from one another. And I think, conversations like this, I know I love learning from all of you, but I think this is an important aspect to the craft beer industry, because if we want to grow, it's kind of sappy, right, Aaron? But we need to learn from one another.
Yeah, I think Jared hit it on the head, and you to a degree as well, Andrew, but with saying that we are going to see a solid mix. But I think it's important to keep in mind things like this, they're a lot better for maintaining relationships than they are for building relationships. And this is a handshake industry. Our entire industry is built around a social occasion. So I don't think you're ever going to see the complete dissolution of things that, put people right in the same room with beers in hand, shaking hands and spending face time. Anybody who's ever done sales can tell you that you get more done in one face-to-face meeting than you do on 3 or 4 Zoom calls. But that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from those regular digital checkups as well. So I think you're going to see the areas where it can be a more efficient mechanism. It'll take over. I mean, I don't write a whole lot of handwritten letters anymore, and I don't use the telegraph. We have better, more efficient means of communication these days. But by the same token, you'll never be able to fully remove the human element from it, because at the end of the day, customers don't buy beer from breweries. They buy beer from people. They buy beer from the retailers. They buy beer from their favorite bartender. Those retailers buy beer from the beer wholesale reps and some distro reps that they interact with. Those wholesalers tend to bet on jockeys, not horses. They interact with brewery owners and people who they know are going to support the product and have insight into it. So we're always going to have that human element at play. And in our industry, we can't move towards commodification. So we need that human element, that hand sellability, to move beyond the numbers and into the narratives and stories that make us more differentiated and make us special compared to what's getting churned out of some factory in New Hampshire or St. Louis.
100%, Aaron. Craft beer is all about relationships. Now, I'd like to throw out one final lightning round of question at the 4 of you today. It's been a challenging year, and putting your businesses aside, all your professional work, away right now, how have you been able to maintain your sanity as a person? What's one positive from your life in the past 12 months? Personal related, not business related. And Mike, because you are to the right of me, you get to go first.
Just try to get outside more than I normally would. And I think now I'm going to write Aaron a letter, just a handwritten letter, just to change it up.
I love it, Mike. Well, Aaron and Mike, someone sent me some beer from the West Coast recently. In the box, they sent some postcards from their brewery with the branding and whatnot on them. I sent them a thank you back on that postcard, and it felt nice to write a letter. So maybe we'll go back to those olden methods of communication as just a fun way to stay top of mind.
Nothing but carrier pigeons going forward.
Someday. Garrett, how about you? Positive from the past year.
Oh, well, one thing I picked up is trying to learn how to play guitar. Since in North Dakota, during the pandemic in the winter months, you can't go outside as often like people like you, Mike. But that was just a fun little thing. And actually, my son got a guitar for his birthday, so that was a fun kind of thing. So we're starting to kind of play together. So it's been a nice, relaxing way to spend some time together.
And Jared, to the right of you on the back wall, is that your guitar?
Yeah, but don't ask me to play it.
I was going to let you at least get ready while Dan and Aaron spoke. Come on.
All right, we're putting on an hour virtual conference. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, you got to play a little, tune before you get finished out of here today. But Aaron, we'll move on to you. I know you've got a daughter, so I imagine there's been a lot of positives in that.
Oh, yeah. The only things I've done for the last year have been work, drink, cook, and chase a toddler around the house. Yeah, it's a pretty fulfilling life if that's all you got. But yeah, no, whole lot of cooking, a whole lot of playing with my daughter. And honestly, that's enough for any life. So I'm comfortable with that.
And if you want to learn about the craft beer industry, see fun pictures of a family running around, or have the latest recipes, tune into Aaron Gore's Facebook page for all of that information.
You can also find me on Instagram at Ale Chaser.
I don't have time for Instagram. I'm too busy on Facebook, honestly. Someday.
True.
Dan, how about yourself? Besides, continuing to grow out your beard throughout the course of the pandemic, what's been a positive in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been the hair. I haven't gotten a haircut since, pre-pandemic. So the picture that you posted is a completely different person than the one I am now. I looked at it and went, oh, I remember him.
Well, it's the picture that you sent me, so I only followed your instructions.
No, that's fair. There's been a lot of drinking new beer, and I got married just before the pandemic started. So, my wife and I have been having fun.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
with that. Well, Mike, Jared, Aaron, and Ben, this has been a really fun time. I appreciate the four of your involvements in our upcoming virtual conference. It's going to be April 19th, 20th, and 21st. Once again, everyone, it's 100% free thanks to people like Mike and the team over at Precision Fermentation, River Drive Cooperage, and White Labs. They're doing amazing things for the craft beer industry. Support them. I thank all of you for joining me today. It's nice to have these human interactions, but as you all echoed, it'll be very nice to have them in person when that time comes. So whether I'm going to see you in September or Dan, when I'm going to see you when you're driving down the East Coast to Chapel Hill, I really look forward to these times where we continue to have, friendships that prosper through the industry, because these are the conversations I really look forward to. So I thank the four of you for joining me today. Stay safe out there and see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Andrew.